Anthony, I'm hearing late is the new on time.
That is correct.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. Of course, we got Mr. Anthony Melchiori over there. I am Glenn Hausman. Anthony, so great to see you.
Great to be seen.
So you see, Anthony, the trick on StreamYard is you got to point the opposite direction that you see the person on the screen, so you get it right.
Oh, I didn't even see that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I didn't realize that. What's up, Glenn?
We've been doing this show now 11 months and change, and I will tell you, I finally figured that out. So I just wanted to
What
brag.
was the day we went live on LinkedIn?
I'm not exactly sure. As I was speaking, I'm like, I got to check that out. And I think maybe one Friday we should rerun that first show and then do something to acknowledge 1 year of hell.
Yeah, I think we should do it too, and it'll show how bad we got over the year instead of better.
Yeah, that's right. That'll be fun. We'll see how young and refreshed I looked a year ago at this time. Also, in a state of shock. Speaking about a state of shock, I'm shocked. If you guys haven't already,
Like property taxes. No, you're shocked at Best Buy.
I was just talking to someone the other day. Hey, and if anybody out there is interested in any sort of consulting on public speaking and podcasting and stuff like that, I was doing one of these things with somebody the other day, and we were talking about transition. So I'm shocked that some of you out there might not have reached out yet to Best Buy Hospitality. That's right. BestBuy.com/hospitality is the preferred TV installation partner for Avendra clients. They're delivering turnkey solutions scalable to meet any project of any size. And clients and customers, well, you're going to get negotiated pricing that was already done for you. You don't have to go through all that effort. And the best part, every dollar you spend with Best Buy counts towards your Avendra spend, including appliances, computing technology, digital signage, and of course, hospitality, TVs, and installation. Please, please, please go check them out at bestbuy.com/hospitality. We've only got a few more days with them as our advertiser. So make sure you make your voice heard. Thank you so much. Also, Bright Support, guys, you know about Bright Support at this moment, and I don't understand why you out there haven't reached out to them, because they're going to help you save money on your property taxes. You made less money last year, pay less money in property taxes this year. Book your free 30-minute consultation right now at brightsupport.net/hotels or call 833-411-2233. That's brightsupport.net/hotels. And of course, tell them No Vacancy sent you. Now, tomorrow, we've got a great show with a company called HIT, and they're going to be focusing on their virtual technology. And already they're already a top national commercial general contractor. They're based in Washington, D.C. They've got offices nationwide, and they've got an amazing piece of technology. And we've got tomorrow Peter Lafranchi. He's their Senior Vice President of Hospitality Construction, and he's going to talk to us about the industry environment and share leading-edge virtual reality and mapping programs they're using on every project that helps minimize construction impacts, reduce costs, and delivers projects on time. That sort of thing gets me really excited. Anthony, I know you like that sort of thing.
Well, I've done some research on them, and I've gotten some really good references, and that they're not only, they're great people, but they get their stuff done on time, and that actually comes out of people I've worked with for a long time. So great company. Be here tomorrow. We will go through what I think is fantastic. I've never seen this kind of software before. If you're thinking about building a hotel, especially if you're building a hotel kind of individually without a brand and without if you've never done it before, they've done it many times.
So you're saying they've done it more than once, more than twice?
They did it more than one time.
All right, so Anthony, right now, I am not standing in front of the Palm Jumeirah Palm Island in Dubai. Why am I here? For two different reasons, or I should say, why am I not here for two reasons? Number one, I love Viceroy Hotel Group. Number two, they're part of the Global Hotel Alliance. And number three, we got the CEO of Global Hotel Alliance, Mr. Chris Hartley here. Now, for those of you who don't know who they are, they're a great organization pulling together some of the coolest brands around the planet, getting them all together so they could compete as one with their Discovery Rewarding Travel Program and other great stuff too. Chris, so great to see you, sir.
Great to be with you. Thank you for having me on all the way from Dubai.
Yeah.
A little warmer over here, I understand.
Was it 9 o'clock there?
Yeah, 9 o'clock at night, but still probably warmer than 10 o'clock in the morning in New York, I would imagine.
Well, we're melting today, and I'm going to California soon, so I will. It'll be nicer. Oh, and by the way, Glenn, I forgot to tell you, I got my vaccine this morning.
Hey, congratulations. You're looking good. My mom gets her second one on Saturday. So, Chris, I don't know what's going on in Dubai, but here in the United States, we seem to be moving forward. We're getting over 1 million vaccinations a day right now. So we seem to be headed in the right direction. What's the status right now in Dubai and the greater European, Middle East, and Asian environments that you know?
Yeah, well, we're doing pretty well here in terms of vaccinations. Actually, Dubai is the UAE, the country, is a very competitive environment, and they like to be the best in the world at everything. As anyone who knows Dubai will testify, and having lived here for a few years, I enjoy this competitive spirit of wanting to be the best. And when it comes to vaccinations, they are up there with the best. I'm also proud to be British, and we're doing pretty well on vaccinations as well back in the UK. But here in Dubai, over 50% of the eligible population for vaccinations has already had a first dose. I'm one of them. I went for the Oxford AstraZeneca, of course, because being British. But we actually have the choice here. They have the Pfizer vaccine. They have AstraZeneca. We even have Sinopharm, the Chinese vaccine, which is produced here in the UAE. And we also have Sputnik 5 as well, the Russian vaccine. And all in all, it seems to be working positively. They've opened up the economy cautiously. We're allowed out and about. Restaurants are open, bars are open, hotels are doing okay. We got a bit of a bad rep over Christmas and New Year because we were partying too much in Dubai. And there was a bit of a spike after the holidays, but that seems to be under control now. And basically, Dubai as a location is looking to welcome people back again. The restrictions, of course, are obviously numerous internationally. And so it's going to be some time. We want to get everyone here vaccinated so we can welcome tourists and business travelers again as soon as possible. And of course, there is the Dubai Expo coming up which was delayed from 2020, which starts at the end of October. So exciting year ahead once the recovery gets underway, and we're pretty confident it will.
Yeah, it's starting to feel like finally that we've been here doing this a year, this show every day at 12 o'clock or 4 days a week now. And like, it seems like, yeah, okay, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It really feels that way. I'll tell you, when I got my shot this morning and I walked out of there, I was ready. I'm like, okay, now in 3 weeks, I got the Pfizer vaccine. So in 3 weeks, I'll be getting my second dose. And it seems like it'll get back to normal. The Nets and the Knicks allowed, I think, a couple thousand people in their stadiums. We're allowing 35% of the people to be in restaurants, and they're allowing small gatherings up to 150 people. So I think by the end of the summer, and with TSA just hired 6,000 more employees because they're really expecting a major rush this summer.
Yeah. All right. What I'd like to do is I want to just set everything up because there's a lot of people that might not be familiar with the Global Hotel Alliance, but out there, you're pretty sure you know brands like Kempinski, the Leela, Omni Hotels and Resorts, Viceroy Travel, where I'm not standing in front of, Outrigger Resorts, Pan Pacific, Anantara, Avani. I could go on and on and on. Corinthia. But then we wouldn't have any time for any content. You're working with some of the greatest brands out there, Chris Hartley. Maybe you could just give us a quick understanding of specifically what the goal of your organization is and how you're pulling together all of these brands to help them compete with the major hospitality companies.
It's great how you knew that list without reading it. Right off the top of your head, you knew that.
That is exactly what I did.
I am impressed, Glenn. You could actually reel them off faster than I could. We have 35 brands now in the Alliance. I was actually fortunate to have worked with one of our founder brands, Kempinski, what now is many years ago, because we started the Alliance back in 2004. And Kempinski, interestingly, was owned by Lufthansa at the time. And those of us that are slightly older will remember that most of the big hotel brands actually were born from an airline.
Right.
And they had airline parent companies. And it was in the 1970s and 80s that those airlines started spinning the hotel businesses off as they realized they needed to focus on the business of airline growth. And so we were one of those companies, Kempinski at the time. We were owned by Lufthansa, and suddenly from one day to the next, we found ourselves as an orphan, if you like. And so the idea at the time was to say, well, if we don't have Lufthansa, who basically enable us to reach customers across the globe easily through their distribution network, through their loyalty program, and effectively through putting passengers into our hotels, how are we going to reach a global audience and compete with the big brands? And we felt that an alliance was a good way to go about that. There are literally dozens and dozens of privately held owner-operators out there in the world, and you've named some of those brands. They became founder members of the alliance, the Omni, Kempinski, Pan Pacific, Regis down in Australia. And over the years, we just identified more and more brands that were owner-operated. They didn't want to be part of a Marriott or a Hilton for good reasons. They wanted to stay independent. And we believe that between us, we offered a consumer that's becoming more sophisticated in terms of the choice of brands they want to have. We think we offer them a great choice of alternative brands, independent brands, very representative of our local markets. And what we've done together is we've collaborated around this loyalty program. Discovery enables us to pool all of our customers together. By the end of 2019, we'd reached 17 million customers, slowed down a bit, obviously, in the last 12 months or so, that growth. But 17 million customers that all of these independent brands are able to reach through our marketing efforts collaboratively and through the individual brands. And so we've effectively created a platform, a loyalty platform that we believe that can compete eventually with Hilton Honors, with Accor Live Limitless, with Marriott Bonvoy. And we know those brands are putting huge amounts of money into developing those loyalty platforms. And we know why, we understand why, we want to compete with them. We want to get closer to our customers, and we want to demonstrate that the independent sector actually offers something different, something exciting, and something that I think the consumer of the future is going to want to get to discover, because the independent sector has a lot to offer, and often very little known because we simply don't have the marketing dollars of the big guys.
So I have two questions. One, what took you so long to get here? And number two, how much marketing do you have to put out there to get everyone to really know who you are? I mean, how many dollars do you have to get the consumer to really understand your brand?
Well, I'll give you numbers that I've heard. You know, Marriott launched Bonvoy with $700 million of marketing spend. Well, you know, if I can get $7 million scraped together between all of our brands, I'm happy. And in the current environment,
$50. How's that?
That's a good start. Well, but you know, it's not so much about the money. We just don't have the budgets of the big players. They're all in on loyalty and marketing. They're more franchise organizations.
But Chris, let me interrupt you. How, as I understand it, you have to get the consumer to understand who you are. How do you get the consumer to understand who you are if you don't have a marketing budget?
How do we get the end consumer to understand who we are? Well, the answer is by gathering data. And data is our strength, because if you don't have the marketing dollars, I can't sponsor a football team. I can't advertise in online newspapers or on Facebook or whatever all of the big hotel marketing organizations are able to do. So I have to use data, and I have to use data smartly. So what we've done is we've collectively brought all of our data together across 35 different brands, and we share that data, and we are using great technology. We've got Oracle as a shareholder and partner in the organization, helping us use that data to target customers directly through building a relationship through the loyalty program. So the honest answer is we don't have a lot of marketing spend in terms of what you traditionally call above the line advertising, but we've got a great ability to target customers with very rich offers through collecting great data, looking at their spend, looking at where they move. And that's the way the alliance has been built, really, around customer data.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that question is because I kind of thought I knew the answer, and you kind of underlined it. Is that's the way? But not only your business, but that's the way you should be looking at business. Period. It's that old formula of marketing, that all those big dollars going into that kind of marketing. We can pinpoint a lot of business before we have to spend that money. And a company like yours, I would imagine that's your lifeblood.
That's right. And I think what we found fantastic is, if you work for a small independent brand, you spend a lot of money building a marketing department with all the usual resources that are expensive to bring in. But you don't actually have the customer data to justify all that central marketing infrastructure. And that means also resources, human resources, to hire a good marketing director, hire a good salesperson, hire a good distribution or revenue manager. These all cost money. For a small brand with maybe 10 hotels, they can't really afford it. They certainly can't afford to build a loyalty platform. They can't afford the CRM technology that you need. So what we're doing is we're aggregating all of that investment for our member brands. And so with good technology, you can then target customers better. Now, again, we're not going to compete on a level of the Marriotts or Hiltons in terms of instant brand awareness of Global Hotel Alliance or Discovery or even the individual brands compared to any of those. But there are so many different ways to reach a consumer today. And a good loyalty platform and good technology is a fantastic and inexpensive way of doing that. And I think what we're here to do is to compete, to put the voice of the independent customer closer to the consumer and closer to more consumers through an aggregated collaborative approach.
And one of the things that I really like about this is people that like independent hotels, but there is a possibility, since a brand such as Viceroy, who we love, is not in every major city around the world. By being part of this program, you start to learn about all these other amazing luxury companies that are out there, and you could use those products and still gain those rewards, eliminating in a lot of ways, Chris, that competitive advantage those massive hotel companies have that say that they're delivering X amount of reservations every single day. Am I right on target with that? How do you see it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we're not the distribution machine that the big companies are that are able to do deals, especially in the business travel sector, where it's very much about big corporate deals and high volume traffic. We're very much focused on premium leisure business. The type of brands that we've got are more leisure oriented resort companies. I'd say about 70% of our individual business now is leisure, going through the Discovery program.
Right.
And so the leisure travel is an altogether different approach. I think what we've got, when you look at, I mean, you mentioned Corinthia, for example. You take the Corinthia in London, you look at the brands that it's up against, that it's competing against in that London market, and yet it's managed to differentiate itself. It's got a great reputation locally, but is it known internationally? And the answer that we bring them is, you've got this great local reputation. Anyone living in London or who knows London really well will tell you Corinthia is one of the best luxury hotels on the market today. But that message, to get that message across to a customer, maybe coming in from Sydney or coming in from New York, is expensive. Now, Marriott are doing that by basically swamping distribution systems and all of the sales channels they have with their big brand messages. We have to do that in a much more targeted and subtle way. But what happens is, once you get a reputation for having cool brands within the alliance, the customer base starts to respond positively, so that when you launch a new brand within the alliance, for example, we just signed Sun International in South Africa, a great South African iconic brand, Sun City, Table Bay in Cape Town, but they're not necessarily the hotel you think of going. You're a business traveler, you're going to Cape Town, you don't know the city particularly well, the chances are you'll end up in a Hilton or a Marriott.
Right.
We're going to give that opportunity for the Table Bay, for example, in Cape Town, to put its name in front of this audience who go, hey, that's not bad. I would never have thought of staying at the Table Bay, but now that I know it's part of the alliance and I'll get recognized and looked after, I'll do that.
Right. And for those of you who don't know, Sun International, interesting company, Saul Kerzner, who founded that company, went on to create Atlantis, which is in the Bahamas. And of course, they got one right near where this one is in Dubai as well. Right. So what I'm really curious about here is, you've got all these different brands working together, but how do you get them all to agree on what you should be doing when it comes to the rewards program? I had the distinct pleasure of being at a summit with all the CEOs a couple of years ago, and I have a feeling a lot of decisions are made at kind of events like that.
That's right. Well, I mean, you witnessed firsthand how we get together our CEOs. Of course, 2020 was the first year in 15 years that we have managed to get all our CEOs together. But we have 35 brands, about 20 individual companies owning those brands instead of owner-operators. So once a year, we get our CEO group together. So CEOs of all these brands representing between the more owner-operated assets than any single one of the major brands out there. So when we get our CEOs sitting around the table, we're representing about 400, 450 owned assets. In some cases, we have owners themselves show up to these meetings. And so you're talking to people, for every dollar it counts for them personally. This isn't about a franchise play or, you know, tiny little margins on every single dollar we create. Every single dollar we can bring to their business or put through a cheaper channel, that's good for those owners. And so what we find is that a couple of days together, a few nice meals, a bottle of wine, good company, building relationships. We have a one-day business agenda, a half-a-day set of discussions. By the time we finish that second day, we've got everyone unanimously to agree on the direction we want to go. No politics. Everyone gets on with each other personally. And it's actually a surprisingly easy way to get decisions taken if you build strong relationships.
Well,
because there's no company politics.
You said they all agree on the second day. You mean after the second bottle of wine, they all agree?
That always helps. especially if it's in Napa, like
that's all.
you were with us.
And it's really critical because, you know, listen, COVID's hit every market, especially the upper market, really, really hard. You know, and do you believe, because it depends on who you talk to, right? And I have my own opinions. The upper market's going to come back faster than people are expecting, or do you think it's going to be as slow as people are expecting?
And feel free to add regional differences that you see.
Yeah, I'm convinced personally, and I'm not going to give you evidence for this other than I can give you examples of the last few months as to what I've seen happen. But I'm convinced that premium leisure is going to come back and people are going to spoil themselves post-pandemic. I think the first thing that people...
Right. Because the good news is when we went into this pandemic, a lot of those people that travel those hotels, their stocks did pretty well.
Right. So people have been saving money. People have been putting money on the stock market. People have made a ton of money on all sorts of things. And some people have just been very conservative and left their money in the bank. But basically, you've got a consumer who's been basically locked down for the last 12, it'd be 18 months by the time this is really over. And boy, have they got a lot of things to celebrate. They want to get out there. They've got weddings, they've got 50th birthdays, they've got whatever it is, family reunions that haven't happened, and they've got money saved, and they're going to upgrade. They're going to stay luxury, they're going to stay longer, and they're going to go further when they can. And we talk, of course, about the recovery of domestic travel, and that's natural while there's a semi-lockdown state in place. As soon as the airlines start opening up again, because travel restrictions are lifted, I'll give you an example. That's why I say I can give you individual examples. We saw it here in Dubai over Christmas and New Year. Rightly or wrongly, Dubai said, we're going to open up to anyone who wants to come in over Christmas and New Year. And the UK had this special relationship with Dubai, always has. They said, we'll create a travel corridor between the UK and Dubai. Well, we all know the weather sucks in the UK, especially over Christmas and New Year. And we all know the weather's great here in Dubai. Guess what? Half the UK who could and felt they were free to do so came over to Dubai. And this place was absolutely chocker. We had 75, 80% occupancy. The beach hotels, 100% occupancy. They were doing rates that were way higher than they did in 2019. We saw islands on the Maldives having higher performance in 2020 than they did in 2019.
Wow.
Higher leisure business. So I just feel that all this demand is pent up. You know, you've got large swathes of the world that people used to travel to, like, you know, Thailand and Bali and places like that have been closed down for all of this time. But bit by bit, these markets are going to reopen. And when they do reopen, you're going to see, I think, great numbers in terms of leisure demand. And talk about business travel, different discussion altogether. But I think that's where the recovery is going to come from.
Yeah, and Dubai lives and dies on tourism. So if they were closed, they basically shut themselves down. Do you think, in retrospect, they made a good decision? And do you think they regret it, or it was a necessary decision to keep their economy going?
It's really fascinating because I joke that here in Dubai I'm one of the oldest people because I'm in my early 50s, and yet here I'm old, and yet back in the UK where I'm from, you know, I'd probably be somewhere middle. I'd still be just about considered middle aged, and so. maybe just about eligible for a vaccine. But Dubai's approach has been pragmatic. We're a young country, and this disease is not doing a lot of harm to the population, even when people are getting it. So why close the entire economy down when you're really only talking about a very low level of hospitalizations because of the age of the population? So that, to me, is a pragmatic and sensible approach. Secondly, as you just said, Anthony, this is a country that relies on tourism, that relies on international traffic. It's built its reputation on being a place to do business, being a place to come for leisure. And so to close yourself down for a year or so is not going to do any good. It's got the world's biggest airline from an international traffic point of view. That airline needs to survive and needs to keep moving passengers around the world. And of course, it's been heavily restricted by other countries' travel restrictions. But the attitude of this country has very much been, we've got to keep going. But they've done it in a very sensible way. We've had to wear masks everywhere. They've got social distancing rules that are very strict. They've got very strict rules in terms of restaurants and bars and how and when they can be used. And everyone's been very sensible and very disciplined. And so we've kept this country going. And I think other countries have taken a more conservative approach, and that's debatable. And at the end of the day, it's up to each government to make their own decisions that are best for their own populations. But I think when we see the end of this, Dubai will look back and say we made the right decision. I say Dubai, the UAE generally, will look back and say we made the right decision. They've got a fantastic expo coming up at the end of the year, and they want to be ready for that. And I think they'll be ready to welcome the world. Whether the world will be ready to travel by the end of the year to Dubai, who knows?
Well, me and Glenn accept your offer to come and speak on your behalf in October. Thank you very much.
We'd love to go to Dubai. I'm not sure how to pronounce the airline. Is it Etihad? Etihad? How do you pronounce that airline?
Etihad.
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 They were the first airline in the entire world based out of the UAE, where Dubai is, to have their entire flight crews vaccinated, first and second shots. So, Chris, that's really interesting to me. They're really putting an emphasis on that. You mentioned that the airport is the most for international travel. Dubai's done a great job over the last 20 years at positioning itself as the hub that everyone needs to go to from Europe onto Asia, and has really created a great business environment over there. So you mentioned a little bit earlier about business travel. Will that come back? Will that not come back? Based on all of your hotel brands out there, what is the general consensus of what they're seeing, feeling, and hoping?
I think business travel's unfortunately a different animal now. And whereas, if I go back to what I was saying earlier, back to the old days when airlines owned hotel companies and started moving people around and creating the first sort of wave of business travel in the 70s and 80s, business travel quickly became the lucrative segment. Everyone wanted business travelers. Unfortunately, even pre-pandemic, business travel had become commoditized. It's controlled by these big travel management companies. Companies have policies and procedures now about the costs of travel, about the safety of travel, about procurement, about how you make sure that every aspect of travel is properly managed. And they make it so competitive in terms of pricing that the business travel had already lost its attractiveness relative to premium leisure travel. So even by the end of 2019, you were seeing downward pressure on business travel rates, growth in supply, companies being very cautious. Then the pandemic hits, and suddenly business travel is like, for about 10 reasons you can't travel business. I mean, you're not allowed to. Governments stop you. Health risk, costs, because companies don't want to have you. And then technology, what we're doing now, I'm talking to you from Dubai. And hey, guess what? Do you really need to have that meeting that you spend thousands of dollars going for a few days for? So everyone's going to rethink business travel in the future. And I think, especially at the premium end of the market, people will look at business travel differently. It's like, if I can get $1,000 from a leisure traveler and give them an amazing experience, but the business traveler is going to argue with me about a $100 rate, then I know I'm going to be at which basket I'm going to be putting my eggs in the future. So that's what I worry about business travel is it's not only going to be slower to recover because of all the things I just said, but also it was inherently less attractive than leisure was already heading into the pandemic. And so I think there's going to be a huge shift in where the hospitality industry is focusing its efforts in the coming years in terms of new products and new experiences.
You just gave me a lesson, I think our audience a lesson in business travel, because I don't know if I looked at it from that perspective entirely. But, in the beginning of this year, social distancing, wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, that all came into our vocabulary. You know what, in 2021, starting in May, June, July, you're going to start hearing? Can that be a Zoom meeting? That's what's good. Can that be a Zoom? Hey, I'm going to England. I'm going to California. I'm going to Italy. Could that be a Zoom? You're going to hear that because right now you don't hear that because nobody's traveling. But you're going to hear that over and can that be a Zoom? And you better have a good answer. And the answer is no, it can't be a Zoom. I got to spend money because we got to keep the travel industry going. That's the answer.
Yeah. And we're talking, you're coming from a lower base now. Business travel, certainly volume business travel in Q2, Q3, I'm still waiting to digest the Q4 numbers, was down 95%. I mean, you can't even begin to get your head around that number. And anyone who's telling you anything different is kidding themselves. Yes, there are pockets of resistance in domestic travel. We saw it in China. We saw it in Australia. We saw it in North America. But any segment that is down 95%, you've got to ask yourself questions. Fundamentally, what drove it down that quickly, that fast? Right. And what is going to enable it to suddenly recover? And as you just said, Anthony, I mean, could you do a Zoom call? Can you save me $5,000 on that airfare plus the hotel-related cost? And then that's before you even consider the shift in thinking in terms of risk, health, sustainability, which is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. Now there's companies already before the pandemic, what are the green credentials of your hotel? Well, green credentials, now everyone's saying, well, we have, the questions over, is air travel good from a sustainability point of view? Well, if you've got all the other factors to consider as well, suddenly that you stick that green thing on the top of it, that's just another thing for companies to be considering, I think, as we enter into this post-pandemic era. And so I think, unfortunately, we have to be realistic and say business travel is going to be under a lot of pressure for a long time. And I don't know in what shape it's going to reemerge, but it's going to look very different.
And I think, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but it's very efficient. Zoom meetings are very efficient. You come in, you go out. You come in, you go out. And there's no hanging out in the hallway waiting for the other guy to show up or the other lady to show up. We're BSing after the meeting. There's people wasting our time in the meeting. I haven't been on one Zoom meeting that has been inefficient. And so as much as I hate to admit that, they're very efficient ways of communicating.
Yeah, I agree. And that becomes a problem. Now, I think I won't say it's all doom and gloom. I think, I was reading a survey today, business travel survey that just came out, that said 85% of travel managers and 81% of travelers themselves say that they believe that business travel is critical to closing deals. So there's
to think about. How much of that is truth versus what they hope to be true, do you think?
Exactly. So
if I can interject, Glenn, to close the deal where you used to have 2 or 3 meetings, now you may only need 1 meeting, right? The biggest concern is, are there going to be enough tailors once everybody starts putting their pants back on to see if they can fit back in their pants? So you're going to have to send your stuff out to a tailor. I'm more concerned about the tailors. They're not going to have enough people to help them.
Yeah, it's going to be really weird going back to conferences, and I'm going to be wearing a sweatpants, Crocs, and a business shirt everywhere.
I just went out to my car. With my slippers, my sweatpants, and my suit, and the mailman looked at me. I go, "What do you think I wear all day?"
No, we got a great question here, Chris, from a friend of the show, Michael Weinberg. Do you think hotel companies are holding on to the past for business travel and not focusing enough on building that leisure audience? The big brands seem to be really strong on business travel, corporate groups, but not necessarily on leisure.
Well, I think I started to answer that question in what I was saying in my 2 comments, both on the recovery, what I believe will be a stronger recovery in leisure travel, and what I think the risks are for business travel going forward. I think there is a problem for the big brands, and I would like to think that our brands are in a good place in this regard. As I said, there's a lot of a leisure focus in the type of brands that we have. And I think the problem with the big brands, if you built an entire brand philosophy over years, quite rightly so, around capturing a huge share of those business travelers, whether in secondary cities, suburban locations, roadside locations, meetings, conventions, and all of the huge segment that became global business travel. I think global business travel represents over $1 trillion in turnover. I mean, it's a huge segment, and so quite rightly, it's been the focus of a lot of the big brands over the years. But if you actually look at the shift today, first you've got hybrid, so people are traveling for business, but actually combining it with leisure. So, but the whole mentality of the traveler of the future, I think, is going to be, well, if I'm going to travel, some of what I'm going to do is be for leisure purposes. And so that means that a pure focus on business travel is hotels that only offer a business travel experience are not going to be interesting for a lot of travelers. I mean, if you're going on this hybrid business trip where your company is saying, that's fine, you can go away for a couple of weeks. I even heard Mercedes-Benz is saying to certain types of employees, you can go and actually work from anywhere in the world for 2 months a year if you want to. So, you go up to Australia, as long as you're doing the job, you're dialing in. And so what you're going to see is people basically creating a sort of quasi-business trip, which is actually a leisure trip.
Right.
So what are they going to do? They're going to look for hotels that have got the leisure experience that they're looking for, but where they can do business. So space.
So then let me add another layer to that. One of the big trends that we were seeing before the pandemic, Chris, was the rise of the digital nomad, people that weren't tethered to a desk in a particular city. My hunch is, based on what I see and what you're saying here, is that will probably continue to be a powerful opportunity for hoteliers out there to grab those types of individuals that are curious about the world around them and don't have to go to the office every day.
Yeah. Personally,
right.
Go ahead, Chris. Answer that. I'm sorry.
No, and I think, again, the same survey I was reading today on business travel was saying that one of the most positive outtakes for business travelers is experiencing and discovering the location you travel to. And that's asking business travelers themselves why they travel. And yet they're saying the most positive thing about business travel is actually the leisure experience I have, the memories I create about the city or destination I'm going to. So to me, that's ingrained in why we want to travel for business anyway. So going back to what you said, Glenn, that if you ask business travelers, is it important to travel on business to close a deal? Of course they're going to say that, because they love the aspect of travel, which is the personal side of it, discovering a location. So you're not going to take that away from people. People still want to travel around the world. People still want to see these amazing places. But companies are going to say, well, that's fine, but you're going to do that on different terms. I'm not paying for you $10,000 to cross the Atlantic for 3 days to go for 3 important meetings in New York and then fly back again. If you want to go to New York for a couple of weeks, by all means do that and do a bit of business while you're there. So that means the hotel product of the future is going to have to be designed for this hybrid traveler. Obviously, you've got the resorts, that's a different thing, ski resorts and the Maldives and all these beautiful places. But these urban locations are going to have to be very different, I think, in the type of product they offer.
I think going into the pandemic, I think only the strong survive. The people that have had a lot of good business models and people that can be counted on survived. And unfortunately, some people haven't, even if they had good business models. With that said, coming back, to normal, we're going to have to be the creative survive. I truly believe in our industry, we're very creative. And I think that we're going to figure it out, just like whether it be in the 20s or the 30s or the 40s. Every decade, there's a problem. Every decade, there's a challenge to overcome. Every 100 years, there's a pandemic. There's always something to overcome. And I truly believe the smart, creative business people will figure it out. May not look the same, but they will figure it out. I know, again, in my business, I'm trying to figure it out, and we're moving pretty fast and rapidly. And if you surround yourself by really talented people, you'll figure it out. But the one thing that I think that we do as hoteliers that hopefully we will stop doing is we will stop thinking for the customer. We have to ask the customer what they want. We have to ask the customer how they're going to travel. We're going to ask, instead of always trying to figure how they're thinking and what they're going to do next year. We got to ask them. It's pretty easy, especially with all the information we just talked about, Chris, in the beginning of the show, that you're able to really target market these people and these customers. Yeah. Ask the question, right? And I think we're getting much better at that. But for many, many years, I think, let's put a kiosk up, let's just do it. Let's give everybody turn down service. Let's just do it. Let's give everybody a bottle of water, 3 bottles of water in their room. Let's charge for internet service. Well, they didn't really want, the turn-down service, but they did want the internet service. But it took us 5 years to figure that out in our business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think companies are adapting. You can see it with their new products, and on the one side, we look at some of the big brands, the Hiltons, the Marriotts, and Sheratons. We think of their products of the 1970s and 80s, and some of those are still around and they're still standing there. And we have a sort of slightly, certainly I do, looking at the independent sector, I have a slightly tainted view of those. I'm like, well, are those products relevant anymore? But you have to admire, as you say, the way the hospitality industry has always adapted. It takes a long time. We're talking bricks and mortar, and it's even more interesting when I'm sitting with owner operators all the time. You own a big building in New York and it's suddenly empty, and you've got all the union issues to think about. You've got the fact there are no more meetings. Yeah. You've got people that are working from home. They're not even coming to the city anymore. I mean, what do you do? And you own that asset. You can't turn it into offices. You can't turn it into residences. I mean, there's a lot to figure out, but people figure it out. I mean, there are smart people.
Most of those buildings will come back, and New York will come back. I'm very confident of it, but there will be changes. I'll tell you, I was in the city yesterday about 4:50. I was just leaving the city almost at 5 o'clock, and I got to tell you something. I didn't see a lot of business people. I saw a lot of workers leaving, but more like service workers. More people that were working in, whether it be for the government, like at MTA, or more maybe a few housekeepers, but you didn't see people in suits. And it was 5 o'clock on what was yesterday, Tuesday. I mean, usually you can set your clock by 5 o'clock. You just see the buildings emptying out. Yeah. And so, but it will come back. It will come back very strong. New York will come back very. Like if you look at Rome, a year ago, I couldn't imagine going to Rome. I mean, give me a plane. I'm going to Rome.
All right, I keep Taj Mahal without 10,000 people ahead of me online. But Chris, I think maybe if some of these hotels don't survive, maybe all the cities will just turn into giant Amazon distribution centers, and that's how we could reap their assets. But Anthony, now when we did our show last week, when we were in Manhattan, we did it from the Great Manhattan Center in the Log Cabin Studio over there. I headed to Brooklyn, got a pizza my kids liked, and I was heading home to Long Island at about rush hour time. And instead of it taking 2 to 3 hours, I zipped right home, and I was home in about an hour. It was really scary, unfortunate by how quick I went.
What I'm really curious about that story, Glenn, is what pizza?
So it is from Smiling Pizza at 7th Avenue and 9th Street. And it is a spinach pizza because my kids, we actually got them to like spinach at an early age.
How much did the spinach pizza from Smiley's set you back in New York City? $18?
No, 24, 25, 26.
Wow. Like, they have to pay that rent.
Trees, after all, grows on the ground. Anyway, Chris, this is really interesting. So you're working with all of these different brands. What are some of the creative things from your cadre of hotels that those executives are doing that you personally think are interesting, and think are going to have some legs to them?
I think the big change that I'm seeing working already, and I'll use Dubai again as an example, so that's where I'm talking from, but we're seeing the change towards hotels looking to their local communities. Now, you've heard this on the big stages of all the conferences for years that, hotels are all about attracting local people, having restaurants in the hotels that are more interesting than they used to be in the past, so people are coming into hotels. But it felt that it was always a struggle. I think the brilliant thing about data that we have today and the ability of technology to communicate with people, for example, with apps and push notifications, is we're able now, we've probably got about 50,000 Discovery members living locally around here. They're people that we've captured over the years staying around the world in our different hotels. They actually live here in Dubai, me, for example. So we would normally not stay in a hotel in Dubai, but as you know, like New York, Dubai is full of great restaurants, great places to go out. Now, how do you engage with those customers when they're not traveling? And the pandemic's been a great opportunity to figure that out, because suddenly we have 17 million loyal customers, but they're not traveling. So we did a lot of research at the beginning of the pandemic. We said, of those 17 million customers, where do they live? And we figured out that over half of them lived within 50 miles of one of our hotels.
Ooh.
And then So then you say, right, I've got an audience of 8 million customers that live within 50 miles of one of my hotels. So instead of just sending out messages saying, come to Bali, go to the Maldives, go skiing in St. Moritz, we were like, hey guys, you live in Dubai, you can't travel at the moment. Why don't you come to one of our hotels? We've got a special evening. We've got a chef doing a special dinner. We've got a special spa treatment. We've got a big party at Nikki Beach this weekend. And you start to see a whole different approach. And what we realize as well is that we need to build our database with younger people as well, because the local communities respond, the younger people in the local communities respond really well. My daughter's mid-20s, she works here in Dubai as well. And they're out, her and her friends are out every weekend. And we realize they're not on our database because they're not big travelers historically. They're too young to be traveling around the world. But I see hotels now as being a focal point for local communities, especially in markets, international cities, where we're going to find it harder to attract people into the cities, certainly in the short term, typical business traveler. So we've got to engage with local communities. And that's the sort of trend that I'm seeing. I mean, I take Nikki Beach as an example here because they're new to the Alliance. You may know the Nikki Beach concept, but it's basically a party concept. And they've just done a brilliant job at engaging with people in Dubai. It's the place to go and be seen at weekends. And so it's very much about the community here in Dubai and not just about the hotel.
What was that comment I just saw from one of our guests? Leisure?
Leisure.
Leisure?
But
I can't read it. Oh, business and leisure. Business and leisure.
By the way, was brought to the fore by Sean Worker, the former CEO of Bridge Global Hospitality, who I happen to collaborate with on a book called The Adapters, which comes out next week. We'll be talking about that more, but I wanted to give Sean a little credit for coming up with that term.
Wow.
So, Chris, any final thoughts before we let you go, sir? And of course, a shameless plug for your company.
Shameless plug. Look, for any independent hotelier that's out there that likes the sound of what we're doing, have a look at globalhoteliance.com. Everything you want to know about who we are, who our shareholders are, who our partners are, who our great brands are. We've got a fantastic collection of independent brands. We believe in the future of the independent sector. We believe we can not just survive this pandemic. We're going to come through the other end more and more popular with a growing leisure consumer, and we're all about great experiences. And Glenn, you've experienced some of our great experiences with our brands in Napa a couple of years ago. Anthony, it sounds like you need to join us for one of our events when we get back together again. I think Global Hotel Alliance is probably, we need to talk about it more often. That would be my final thought, because we got lots of great stories to tell you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
How awesome is that? He called in all the way from halfway around the world in Dubai.
You know everybody. You know everybody. Everybody knows you. You're Glenn. You're the man. I'm not the man. You're the man. Who's the man? Glenn's the man.
I appreciate that. Now, listen, we normally don't do this, but we have a special message of thanks from producer Dave, because he is up at Resorts World, and he just wanted to say something real quick.
Where is he?
Oh, I'm at Resorts World Catskills.
What are you doing there?
They really took care of me and allowed me to bring my family up here for a little getaway. So I want to say thank you to Marcio Marizella. Listen, guys, I mean, we did the show obviously last week. The place is beautiful. It's just as beautiful now. My kids are loving it. My daughter hasn't been out of the pool for the last 10 hours. So if you're traveling for leisure,
streets that's overlooking the pool. You're such a rock star. You have your own pool. You're such a rock star.
That's because there's people at Resorts World take such good care of me, and I can't thank them enough. So listen, if you guys are traveling for business, leisure, groups, huge convention center here, reach out to Marizella Alfaro. She's going to be the sales manager and take care of you, because she's been taking care of me, Anthony, and Glenn for the last few weeks when we did our show up here.
Great.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate it. All right. And while you're taking care of things out there, make sure you give a ring over to Bright Support. You got to lower your taxes. You're paying too much in property taxes. Why are you doing that? You shouldn't be doing it. You can reach out to brightsupport.net, brightsupport.net/hotels, and let them help you find a way to lower your property taxes for free. Give a call at 833-411-2233. All right, Anthony, let's wrap this up. Any final?
Yeah, I agree with David. Resorts World of Catskills is great, and I love their pool area, the indoor pool area. So get in the car, go up to Resorts World Catskills. It really is a great hotel. Take us out, brother.
And make sure that you're with us tomorrow for the show on HIT. Next Monday, we've got an absolutely incredible, phenomenal, fantastic job fair. Spread the word on that. And then Tuesday, our love affair with Resorts Worlds continues when we got Las Vegas icon Scott Zabello, who's running Resorts World Las Vegas right here on No Vacancy Live. And Anthony, I got to tell you one more thing that you're going to like this.
I'm listening.
According to listennotes.com, if you go there and you type in checking in with Anthony and Glenn or No Vacancy with Glenn Hausman, our 2 podcast feeds that we have, both shows are in the top 0.5% of all podcasts on the entire planet. How cool is that?
What?
Yeah.
Are you surprised?
No,
you know why? Not because of us, because of our great, crazy good guest and audience. I mean, listen, hospitality people want to hear about hospitality things. So that's fantastic. So we're 365 on that list of all podcasts in the world.
5% of all. There you go. Look at that. Yeah, look at that. That's pretty awesome.
In the world.
Yep.
In the world.
That's why you all should be advertising here on the No Vacancy podcast.
Come on. Just listen. I don't care if you advertise, just listen. Take it out of here.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Remember, you've got one life, so blaze on and
be kind to yourself.